pertaining to the SABC and the minister's powers in this respect. And does it mean that the SABC will now have complete independence? Well, this is what we are trying to figure out with our guest this morning from SOS as Thandi Smith. Well, Thandi, let's just get back to the ruling yesterday. Justice Matojane also brought up Ms. Duda's case. You'll remember this goes back to 2012, and she was a chief financial officer here at the SABC. And what had happened was that she was allegedly appointed without regular procedure being followed. And he specifically highlighted, that specific issue. So what do you make of that? Why did he feel the need to highlight that?
Yeah, I think, it is interesting that that specific case was highlighted. But I also think that it goes to the irregularities of appointment processes and that proper procedures weren't followed. And it was a really great example of a specific instance of ministerial interference in appointments of really important positions. CFO, I mean, you're dealing with financial issues, you're dealing with the health and the well-being of the public broadcaster. We know that the public broadcaster has been struggling with massive financial crises over the last couple of years, and it's part of what the board is trying to remedy at the moment. But I think, it highlights again the gravity of the situation around the minister's powers and, the previous powers that the department had. But yeah, it's a brilliant example of just how easy it was to appoint and to put people in place within the public broadcaster that allowed for political interference.
Well, the question, of course, now is, how is this going to change in practice? Does this judgment actually assist in that regard?
Yeah. Well, we've already seen examples of the judgments assisting in this. We see a lot more weight behind the parliamentary processes taking place, in that the minister can't just interfere with both. So I think what's important to remember is that it's non-executive members and executive members of the board. So the judgment deals with both of those processes. So now there is a lot more weight on the parliamentary side of things around the removal and appointment of board members. And again, no more interference by whoever has the position of Minister of Communications. And it gives the board a lot more independence.
Is that guaranteed? What happened to that memorandum of incorporation?
So I'm glad you're bringing that up, because what we have to do now is there have to be amendments made to these documents. The ruling, the judgment has addressed this, and there needs to be amendments made to the MOI as well as the Broadcasting Act to have these in effect. So the judgment stands for a year, but within that year period, these amendments do need to happen for that to take effect. I'm not entirely sure of what happens if those amendments aren't made within the year period. I think that will be taken to the courts if it doesn't happen, but it has been dealt with in the judgment.
And just a final one, perhaps. Do you think that this case will set a precedent for other SOEs and how these sort of issues are dealt with there?
Absolutely. I think that we seeing this wave of newfound sort of taking back the institutions that belong to the public, and that we won't stand for political interference into what should be managed in the best interests of the public. And so I think this is a great sort of precedent to take a stand and say, we are aware of the issues of independence. We are aware of the issues of good governance that needs to take place. So it's a great example of a ruling that really takes the public interest into account.
Thandi Smith, thank you so much for stopping by this morning.
Thank you.
Very, very important ruling yesterday. And of course, we'll be watching. We're part of this. And you tell us what you make of it all. As Thandi was saying, as you can see, we are now independent and impartial as SABC News. And it's up to you to hold us accountable and to hold us to that promise. We're going to take a break.